The discovery, the emergency signal. Captain Sarah Chen pressed her palm against the cold metal of the observation deck window, watching the stars drift past like scattered diamonds on black velvet. The research vessel Terra Nova had been her home. For 3 years now, carrying a crew of 200 humans on humanity's first deep space exploration mission. What started as a simple scientific survey had become something much more significant. When they discovered they weren't alone in the universe, the bridge communication system crackled to life, interrupting her thoughts. Captain to the bridge immediately came the urgent voice of her first officer, Commander Marcus Rodriguez. Sarah had never heard that tone from Marcus before, not even during their encounter with the Andromedan pirates 6 months ago. Sarah hurried through the corridors, her boots clicking against the polished floor. When she arrived at the bridge, she found her crew staring at the main display screen with expressions of disbelief. The screen showed a swirling mass of energy unlike anything in their databases. "Report," Sarah said, settling into her command. Chair, Lieutenant Emma Walsh, their communications officer, turned to face her. "Captain, we received a distress signal approximately 10 minutes ago. The language is unknown, but our computers are working on translation. The signal is coming from coordinates that should be empty space according to our star charts." "Show me," Sarah ordered. The main screen shifted to display the translated message, though it flickered with uncertainty as the computer struggled with the alien language. "Emergency, Royal Fleet. Prince Zephyr, ... disappeared. Help needed, ... coordinates, follow." Dr. James Harrison, the team's xenobiologist, looked up from his console. "Captain, I've never seen energy readings like these. Whatever happened out there, it defies our understanding of physics. The gravitational distortions alone should have torn apart anything in the area." Sarah studied the data scrolling across her screens. 12 large vessels had vanished without explanation, taking with them the crown prince of an alien civilization she'd never heard of. The responsible thing would be to report this to Earth Command and wait for instructions. But the distress signal suggested survivors who needed immediate help. Set course for those coordinates, she decided. Maximum speed. First contact 3 hours later. Terra Nova dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of what could only be described as a cosmic graveyard. Debris floated in perfect formations, as if the ships had been carefully disassembled rather than destroyed. In the center of it all hung a single vessel, its hull glowing with an eerie blue light. "I'm reading life signs," announced Dr. Harrison. "Definitely not human, but the biological patterns suggest intelligence. There are maybe 20 survivors aboard that ship." Sarah made another command decision that would change human history. "Prepare the shuttle. I'm going over there personally." Commander Rodriguez stepped forward. "Captain, with respect, we have no idea what we're dealing with. These could be hostile aliens, or the survivors of some kind of civil war." "All the more reason for a diplomatic approach," Sarah replied. "If these are truly aliens asking for our help, then how we respond could determine humanity's future relationships with other civilizations." The shuttle bay filled with nervous energy as Sarah's away team prepared for humanity's first official alien contact. Besides herself, the team included Dr. Harrison, Security Chief Lieutenant Colonel Amy Foster, and Engineer Specialist David Park. Each wore environmental suits equipped with translation devices and emergency beacon transmitters. As their shuttle approached the alien vessel, Sarah marveled at its design, where human ships were built for function and efficiency. This craft seemed to blend technology with art. its hull curved in impossible ways, covered with patterns that seemed to shift and change as they watched. Incoming transmission, announced the shuttle's communication system. This time, the alien language came through clearly, translated in real time. Unknown vessel, this is Admiral Cathara of the Zephyrian Royal Guard. We detected your approach and are grateful for your response to our distress call. Please identify yourselves. Sarah activated the response channel. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Terra Nova. We received your emergency signal and came to offer assistance. We're new to this part of space. A pause, then, Earth, we have no records of this world in our databases. Are you, perhaps, refugees from one of the outer colonies? Actually, Sarah said carefully, we're from a planet called Earth, in what you might know as the Sol System. We're human beings, and this is our first contact with alien life. The silence stretched long enough that Sarah began to worry their translation systems had failed. Finally, Admiral Cathara responded. Impossible. The Sol System was surveyed. 500 years ago, it contained only primitive life forms. You cannot be from there. Dr. Harrison leaned toward the microphone. Admiral, evolution can be surprisingly rapid under the right conditions. Perhaps your people haven't checked our system recently. Another pause, then, permission granted to dock. We need to see you face to face. The shocking truth, the airlock, cycled open to reveal beings that would haunt Sarah's dreams for years to come. The Zephyrians stood nearly 8 feet tall, with skin that seemed to be made of living crystal that caught and reflected light in mesmerizing patterns. Their faces were elegant and angular, with large eyes that held ancient wisdom and current. Desperation. Admiral Cathara stepped forward, her crystalline skin pulsing with what Sarah would later learn indicated deep respect. Captain Chen, I must admit that seeing you has shaken everything I believed about the universe. You are clearly intelligent beings, yet our records indicate your species should not have achieved space travel for another 1,000 years. Time has a way of surprising everyone, Sarah replied diplomatically. But right now, we're more concerned with your emergency. What happened to your royal fleet? The Admiral's skin shifted to darker, more somber colors. 3 days ago, we were escorting Prince Sephitan to his coronation ceremony on our home world. 12 of our finest ships, carrying the future emperor, and 50,000 of our people. We were traveling through what should have been safe space when ... They simply vanished. She led them to the ship's main display, which showed a 3-dimensional recreation of the incident. One moment, the entire fleet was in perfect formation. The next, they were gone. No energy discharge, no explosion, no debris, just ... nothing. Lieutenant Colonel Foster studied the display. What about your sensors? They must have detected something. That's what makes this so terrifying, Admiral Cathara replied. Our instruments recorded the ships disappearing, but they also recorded them continuing on their course as if nothing had happened. It's as though reality itself split into 2 versions. Dr. Harrison's eyes widened. Are you describing some kind of dimensional fracture? A split in space-time itself? We don't know what to call it, the Admiral admitted. Our scientists have theorized about such things, but never imagined they could occur naturally. The energy readings we detected just before the disappearance were beyond anything in our experience. Sarah felt the weight of the moment. Humanity's first contact with alien life, and they were being asked to solve a mystery that had stumped a civilization with 500 years of advanced technology. Every instinct told her to be cautious, to call for backup, to let someone else handle this impossible situation. Instead, she heard herself saying, "Admiral, the human race may be young compared to your people, but we've learned that sometimes a fresh perspective can solve old problems. If you're willing to work with us, we'd like to help you find your missing people." The Admiral's skin brightened, two colors that Sarah instinctively understood meant hope. "Captain Chen, if your people can help us recover Prince Sephitan and our missing citizens, the Zephyrian Empire will be forever in your debt." As Sarah shook hands, or rather, touched crystal fingers with the alien admiral, she realized that humanity had just taken its first step into a larger universe. But she also knew that whatever had taken 12 royal ships could probably take them too. The mystery was just beginning, and the stakes couldn't be higher. The stars outside seemed different now, full of possibilities and dangers that Sarah had never imagined. Earth's children were no longer alone, but that knowledge came with a price. Somewhere in the darkness between dimensions, 50,000 alien lives hung in the balance, and humanity's reputation in the galaxy would be determined by what happened next. Sarah looked at her team, seeing her own determination reflected in their faces. They were no longer just explorers or scientists. They had become humanity's first interstellar diplomats and detectives, tasked with solving a mystery that could reshape the balance of power across the galaxy. The adventure was about to begin, asterisk. The investigation begins in likely alliance. The conference room aboard Terra Nova had never hosted aliens before, but Sarah had quickly adapted her ship's facilities to accommodate their crystalline guests. Admiral Kethera sat across from the human command team, her skin cycling through subtle color changes that Dr. Harrison was frantically trying to decode with his instruments. "The first thing we need to understand," Sarah began, "is exactly what your sensors recorded during the disappearance. Dr. Harrison here specializes in unusual energy phenomena, and our engineer park has experience with dimensional theories that might be relevant." Admiral Kethera gestured, and a holographic display materialized above the table, showing detailed sensor readings from the moment of the fleet's disappearance. "These are the exact readings from our flagship's instruments. As you can see, at timestamp 14 hours 23 minutes and 7 seconds, all 12 ships were present and accounted for. At 14 hours 23 minutes and 8 seconds, they simply ... weren't." David Park leaned forward, studying the energy patterns. "Admiral, I'm seeing something here that doesn't make sense. These quantum signatures suggest the ships didn't just disappear, they were displaced. Look at this resonance pattern." He pointed to a series of waveforms on the display. "This is consistent with what human physicists call a dimensional membrane breach. It's theoretical, but if something could create a hole between parallel realities, this is what the energy signature might look like." Dr. Harrison nodded excitedly. "David's right, but look at this additional data." He manipulated the hologram to highlight different aspects. "There's a secondary pattern here, almost like an echo. It suggests that whatever took your ships isn't random, it's controlled." Admiral Kethera's skin shifted to what Sarah was learning indicated alarm. "Controlled? You're suggesting this was an attack?" "Not necessarily an attack," Sarah said, carefully, "but it does suggest intelligence behind the phenomenon. Something or someone with technology advanced enough to manipulate dimensional barriers." Lieutenant Colonel Foster had been quietly studying tactical data during the discussion. "Admiral, in the weeks before this incident, did your intelligence services detect any unusual activity? Strange energy readings? Unidentified ships? Anything out of the ordinary?" The Admiral's expression grew thoughtful. "Now that you mention it, yes, Several outer colonies reported strange lights in space, moving in patterns that didn't match any known ships or natural phenomena. We attributed them to cosmic storms or equipment malfunctions. Could you provide us with those reports? Sarah asked. Sometimes patterns become clear when you look at all the data together. As the Admiral transmitted the files, Sarah felt a familiar tingling sensation. The same one she'd experienced during her academy days when she was on the verge of solving a particularly complex problem. There was a pattern here, she was certain of it. Strange discoveries for the next 6 hours. Human and Zephyrian scientists worked together, sharing knowledge and comparing notes. What emerged was troubling. The strange lights reported by the colonies followed a distinct pattern, appearing closer and closer to major Zephyrian population centers over the past 3 months. It's like something was scouting, observed Dr. Harrison, testing defenses, studying your technology, learning your patrol routes. Engineer Park had been running simulations on his quantum computers. Captain, I've been modeling the dimensional displacement theory, and I think I know where the missing ships might be. He activated a 3-dimensional star map, showing layers of reality stacked like transparent sheets. If my calculations are correct, the ships weren't destroyed. They were pushed into a parallel dimension, one that exists in the same space as ours, but on a different vibrational frequency. Admiral Kethera studied the display. Is such a thing even possible? With human technology? No, Park admitted. But we're clearly dealing with something far more advanced than anything either of our civilizations has developed. Sarah felt pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. Admiral, you mentioned earlier that your people surveyed the Sol system 500 years ago. What exactly did that survey entail? Standard procedure, the Admiral replied. Energy scans, biological surveys, assessment of technological development. We detected primitive life, but nothing approaching civilization. But you didn't make contact or leave any monitoring equipment. Of course not. The Galactic Accords strictly prohibit interference with developing civilizations. We simply noted the system's location and moved on. Dr. Harrison looked up from his analysis. Captain, I think I see where you're going with this. If someone has been watching humanity's rapid development, they might see us as a threat to the established galactic order. Sarah nodded. Or as a useful tool. Think about it. Humanity develops space travel centuries ahead of schedule. Suddenly, we appear in Zephyrian space just when their royal fleet disappears. What if this whole situation is designed to bring us together? The thought sent chills through both human and alien team members. Lieutenant Colonel Forster voiced what everyone was thinking. You mean we might be walking into a trap? Before Sarah could respond, Terra Nova's communication system activated. Lieutenant Walsh's voice came through with barely controlled panic. Captain, to the bridge, immediately. We're detecting massive energy buildups throughout this entire sector. Whatever took the Zephyrian fleet... It's happening again. The phenomenon spreads. The bridge erupted in controlled chaos as Sarah and her team arrived. The main display showed a horrifying sight. Across a dozen star systems, ships were disappearing exactly as the Zephyrian royal fleet had vanished. But these weren't just Zephyrian vessels. The sensor readings indicated multiple alien civilizations were being affected. Report, Sarah ordered, settling into her command chair. Captain, we're receiving distress calls from at least 6 different species, Walsh announced. The translation computer is having trouble keeping up. But the message is the same everywhere. Ships are vanishing without trace. Admiral Kethera had followed them to the bridge. Her crystalline features, now cycling through rapid color changes that Dr. Harrison's instruments indicated were pure terror. This is impossible, even if some unknown civilization possessed such technology. Why would they attack so many different species simultaneously? David Park was frantically working at his engineering station. "Captain, I'm detecting something else. These disappearances aren't random, they're following a pattern. Each incident is creating dimensional stress fractures, and those fractures are connecting to form some kind of network." "A network for what purpose?" Sarah asked. "I don't know, but if my readings are correct, the stress is building toward a central point. Something big is coming." Dr. Harrison looked up from his instruments with an expression of dawning horror. "Captain, I've been analyzing the quantum signatures from all these incidents. They're not just dimensional displacements, they're energy harvesting operations. Someone is stealing the life force from entire civilizations." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. Thousands of ships, millions of beings from across the galaxy, all being systematically harvested by an unknown intelligence. And humanity, the newest species in space, had stumbled into the middle of it. Admiral Sarah said quietly, "I think we need to consider the possibility that your prince and all these other disappearances are part of something much larger. We're not just dealing with a local phenomenon, we're looking at a galactic-scale threat." Admiral Cathera's skin had settled into deep, somber colors. "Captain Chen, if you're correct, then our combined civilizations may not be enough to stop whatever is behind this." Sarah studied the star map, showing the spreading pattern of disappearances. Every instinct told her to retreat, to take Terra Nova and her crew back to Earth, where they could warn humanity about the dangers of deep space. But then she thought about Prince Sephitan and the 50,000 Zephorians depending on them. She thought about the millions of other beings who had already vanished, and the billions more who would follow if they didn't act. "Maybe not," she said finally, "but sometimes the youngest voice in the room has the freshest ideas. Human civilization might be new, but we've survived ice ages, world wars, and planetary disasters by adapting and thinking creatively when others couldn't." She turned to her crew, seeing determination replacing fear in their expressions. "This isn't just about rescuing the Zephrian royal fleet anymore. We're looking at a threat to every intelligent species in the galaxy. And since we seem to be the only ones who stumbled onto this pattern early enough to do something about it, I'd say the universe just made humanity responsible for fixing it." Commander Rodriguez stepped forward. "Captain, you're talking about taking on an enemy with technology far beyond anything we understand. Using a single research vessel against forces that have already defeated multiple galactic civilizations." Sarah smiled grimly. "Rodriguez, when has humanity ever been deterred by impossible odds?" As if in response to her words, Terra Nova's sensors detected a massive energy buildup directly ahead of them. The stars themselves seemed to ripple and bend as space-time twisted into impossible configurations. In the center of the distortion, a massive structure began to materialize, a city-sized construct of dark metal and pulsing energy that radiated malevolent intelligence. "Well," Dr. Harrison said with nervous humor, "I think we're about to meet whatever's behind all this." Admiral Cathera's skin flickered with patterns that suggested both fear and admiration. "Captain Chen, your species may be young, but you have something that our ancient civilization has forgotten: the courage to face the unknown without certainty of victory." Sarah gripped the arms of her command chair as the alien construct grew larger on their screens. "Admiral, I have a feeling that's exactly what we're going to need." because I don't think whatever built that thing is interested in negotiation. The universe had just become a much more dangerous place, but humanity was about to prove that sometimes the smallest voice could make the biggest difference. The real adventure was about to begin. Asterisk.
The void between Jupiter and Saturn crackled with unseen energy as the UES Prometheus maintained its silent vigil. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the bridge's observation deck, her weathered hands clasped behind her back as she studied the distant pinpricks of light that marked the edge of human space. 20 years of service had taught her that peace was always temporary, but today's silence felt different, heavier, more pregnant with possibility. Contact, multiple signatures. Lieutenant Rivera's voice cut through the quiet. Unknown configuration, no match in our database. They're not broadcasting any known identification protocols. Chen's posture remained unchanged, but her eyes narrowed slightly. Humanity had spent the last century preparing for this moment, knowing they couldn't remain alone in the cosmos forever. Show me. The holographic display materialized before her, showing 12 sleek vessels arranged in a perfect geometric formation. Their design spoke of advanced engineering. All curved lines and seamless construction, without a single visible external component. They were beautiful, in the way that all deadly things could be beautiful. They're scanning us. Chief Engineer Pottle reported from his station, dark fingers dancing across haptic interfaces. Impressive tech. They're using some kind of quantum tunneling sensor array, but they won't get past our adaptive shielding. The Prometheus represented humanity's greatest achievement in defensive technology. Its hull contained billions of microscopic quantum computers that could reorganize matter at the subatomic level, making the ship essentially immune to conventional scanning techniques. It was just one of countless innovations born from humanity's paranoid preparation for first contact. "They're transmitting," Communications Officer Jackson announced. It's not in any language we know, but the AI is working on it. Structure suggests it's some kind of formal declaration. Chen allowed herself a small smile. "Let me guess. They're demanding our immediate surrender and submission to whatever empire they represent." Jackson's surprised look confirmed it before she could speak. "How did you?" "Because that's what we would do, if we were them," Chen replied. "Any sufficiently advanced civilization would want to establish dominance early. The question is whether they're prepared for us to say no." The alien transmission finished translating across their neural interfaces. The Kraxan Empire, as they called themselves, had indeed demanded Earth's immediate submission and integration into their benevolent collective. They claimed to rule over 1,000 worlds and offered humanity the choice between peaceful submission or forceful subjugation. "Send them our response package," Chen ordered. The package contained humanity's carefully crafted first contact protocols, a combination of scientific achievements, cultural information, and a firm but diplomatic assertion of Earth's sovereignty. It also contained subtle hints about humanity's defensive capabilities, carefully crafted to warn without threatening. The response was immediate and violent. The Kraxan ships shifted formation, weapon systems charging with visible energy signatures. "They're targeting our primary reactor," Tactical Officer Zhao reported calmly. "Standard Alpha strike pattern. They're not very creative, are they?" "No point in being creative when you're used to overwhelming force," Chen replied. "Activate defensive countermeasures. Let's show them why humanity has survived this long." The first salvo of alien weapons fire splashed harmlessly against the Prometheus's quantum shields, the energy being absorbed and redirected into the ship's own systems. The alien vessel's next scans showed clear signs of confusion. Their sensors couldn't even detect how their attacks were being neutralized. "They're launching some kind of autonomous attack drones," Rivera reported. "Hundreds of them." Chen nodded. "Deploy the swarm." From the Prometheus's hull emerged thousands of microscopic drones, each one smaller than a grain of sand, but containing more computing power than all of humanity's 20th century computers combined. They moved like a living cloud, intercepting and disabling the alien drones through methods that would seem like magic to less advanced civilizations. The Kraxan ships began to retreat, their formation breaking down in what was clearly surprise and confusion. They hadn't expected resistance, let alone resistance they couldn't understand. "They're preparing to jump out, system," Jackson reported. "But they're transmitting one final message." Chen didn't need to wait for the translation. She knew they would be back, and in greater numbers. But that had always been part of the plan. Humanity had spent a century preparing not just for first contact, but for first conflict. They had hidden their true capabilities, developed technologies that operated on principles other races hadn't even theorized yet. "Log it in the records," Chen ordered. First contact with the Kraxan Empire. Earth date August 15, 2487. They came expecting to find primitives. They left knowing better. As the alien ships disappeared into faster-than-light travel, Shan allowed herself a moment of reflection. Humanity had passed its first test, but the real challenge was just beginning. The Kraxan would return with a proper invasion fleet, but they would find that humanity's apparent technological advantage was just the beginning. "Send word to Earth Command," she ordered. "Tell them to activate the Chimera Protocol. It's time to show the galaxy what humanity can really do." 3 days after first contact, the Kraxan Empire returned with what they considered an unstoppable force. 200 warships emerged from hyperspace, their hulls gleaming with the accumulated technology of 1,000 conquered worlds. At their center, the flagship Eternal Dominion stretched nearly 5 kilometers from bow to stern, its weapon systems capable of reducing entire continents to ash. High Admiral Zextal stood on his command deck, his crystalline exoskeleton refracting the light of distant stars. "Show me this impudent vessel that dared to resist the Empire," he commanded, his translator converting the complex harmonics of his native speech into standard galactic basic. The holographic display showed the UES Prometheus, still maintaining its position near Saturn's rings. To the Kraxan sensors, it appeared almost insultingly small, barely a kilometer in length, with no visible weapon emplacements or defensive systems. "Their arrogance ends today," Zextal declared. "All ships commenced the purification protocol." But Commander Chen and the Prometheus were not alone. As the Kraxan fleet arranged itself into attack formation, dozens of quantum distortions rippled through space. The Chimera Protocol was now in full effect. "Quantum mirrors deployed," Chief Engineer Puddle reported aboard the Prometheus. "The Kraxan are about to learn why humans spent so much time studying light shows and magic tricks." The quantum mirrors were perhaps humanity's greatest deception. Artificial space-time distortions that could bend light and energy in impossible ways. To the Kraxan fleet sensors, it suddenly appeared as if they were facing not one human vessel, but hundreds, each one a perfect copy of the Prometheus. Impossible. Zextal's crystalline form vibrated with shock. "Their vessel is multiplying." "No, Admiral," his science officer corrected. "These are some form of advanced holograms, but our sensors cannot distinguish them from the original. They're somehow bending space-time itself to create perfect replications." The Kraxan fleet opened fire, their energy weapons and graviton torpedoes lighting up the space between Saturn and Jupiter like a new sun. But their targeting computers couldn't determine which Prometheus was real, and the quantum mirrors reflected their attacks back at random, creating a chaos of friendly fire incidents throughout their formation. "Launch the Nexus swarms," Chen commanded. From each apparent Prometheus, clouds of microscopic robots emerge, their quantum-entangled processors allowing them to act with perfect coordination across vast distances. These weren't simple defensive drones. They were the product of decades of research into programmable matter. The swarms infiltrated Kraxan ships through microscopic gaps in their hull plating, interfacing with and disrupting their control systems. Weapons failed to fire, engines misfired, and communication systems broadcast gibberish. The mighty armada began to lose coherence as individual ships lost control of their basic functions. What manner of weapons are these? Zextal demanded as his flagship systems began to fail one by one. No species we've encountered has technology like this. That's because no species you've encountered had to live with our paranoia. Chen transmitted on an open channel. Humanity spent centuries knowing we weren't alone, preparing for the worst. Every science fiction story, every paranoid theory about alien invasions, we turned them all into research projects. The Prometheus, the real one, began to move, its quantum drive allowing it to appear to be in multiple places simultaneously. The ship's hull rippled like liquid metal as its adaptive systems reconfigured for combat, revealing weapon systems that had been hidden at the quantum level. We developed technologies that don't just solve problems, they rewrite the rules of what's possible. Chen continued. We didn't build bigger guns or stronger shields. We learned to manipulate reality itself. The Prometheus fired its primary weapon, not a conventional energy beam or projectile, but a focused stream of altered space-time that caused a section of the Kraxan fleet to experience time at 1,000th of normal speed. The affected ships appeared to freeze in space, their crews trapped in a moment of dawning comprehension. Zextal watched in horror as his mighty fleet was systematically dismantled by technology that shouldn't exist. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were redefining what combat could be. His flagship's systems continued to deteriorate as the Nexus swarms reprogrammed its quantum processors, turning its own technology against it. Perhaps, Chen transmitted again. It's time we discussed more reasonable terms for our species' coexistence. After all, humanity doesn't seek conquest. We just want to ensure we're never conquered. As the Eternal Dominion systems finally failed completely, leaving it dead in space, Zextal realized that his empire had made a terrible mistake. They had assumed that any species they hadn't conquered must be primitive. Instead, they had found a race that had turned their isolation into strength, their paranoia into innovation, and their imagination into reality-bending technology. The dance of giants was ending, and humanity had led every step. The Grand Council of the Kraxan Empire convened an emergency session for the first time in 3 centuries. The crystalline forms of the highest-ranking advisors shimmered with agitation as they processed the devastating defeat of their fleet. At the center of the vast chamber, Supreme Overlord Caxthal's massive form pulsed with barely contained rage. 2 centuries of uncontested expansion. Caxthal's harmonics reverberated through the chamber, ended by a single species from an unremarkable star system. This cannot stand. The tactical displays showed the remains of their defeated fleet, still frozen in time near Saturn. The human vessel that had caused such devastation had disappeared, leaving behind only quantum echoes that confused their most sophisticated sensors. We have activated the Omega Protocol, War Minister Vexnar announced. The entire combined fleet is being mobilized. 5,000 ships, including our world breakers. Even these humans cannot stand against such force. But on Earth, humanity was far from idle. In underground facilities spanning every continent, long-dormant systems were awakening. Commander Chen stood in the heart of Luna Base Alpha, watching as humanity's greatest secrets prepared for war. Project Prometheus was just the beginning. General Zhang explained to the assembled Earth Defense Council. It was our proof of concept, showing that our theoretical physics could be weaponized. But we've had a century to develop far more than just one ship. Deep beneath the lunar surface, massive fabrication systems hummed to life. They weren't building traditional ships or weapons. They were creating something far more ambitious. Quantum computers calculated impossible equations, bending the fabric of reality itself to humanity's will. The Kraxan combined fleet emerged from hyperspace in waves, their ships blackening space with their sheer numbers. World breakers, massive vessels capable of destroying planets, took up position around the solar system. Their arrival was meant to instill terror, to show humanity the futility of resistance. Instead, they found Earth's orbital space empty. No ships, no stations, no defensive platforms, just silence. They're hiding. Caxthal sneered from his command throne aboard the Empire's greatest vessel, the World Ender. Scan for quantum signatures. Find their precious Prometheus. But before his orders could be carried out, space itself seemed to shiver. Throughout the solar system, reality began to warp and bend. The quantum manipulation technology that the Prometheus had demonstrated was being implemented on a scale that defied comprehension. Multiple anomalies detected. The sensor officers screamed in harmony. The local space-time fabric is reorganizing itself. From the distortions emerged humanity's true defense system. They hadn't built a fleet. They had turned the solar system itself into a weapon. Geometric patterns of pure energy formed in space, creating a vast lattice of quantum-locked barriers and temporal distortion fields. Welcome to the Sol System Defense Grid. Chen's voice transmitted across all frequencies. We thought about building more ships like Prometheus, but why stop there? We've turned our entire solar system into a single, integrated quantum computer. The world breakers fired their planet-destroying weapons, but the energy beams twisted in impossible ways, caught in the quantum lattice that now permeated space. Some shots disappeared into temporal voids. Others emerged years in the past or future, harmlessly dissipating into the void. From Earth's surface, massive gravitational pulse generators activated, their power drawn from the planet's core itself. They didn't target the Kraxan ships directly. Instead, they began to reshape the fundamental forces holding space together. Impossible. Vexnar shouted as his tactical displays showed the unthinkable. They're creating artificial physics, the universal constants. They're changing them within the system's boundaries. Within the altered space, the Kraxan ships' advanced technology began to fail. Their power systems, designed to work with normal physical laws, couldn't function in areas where the speed of light itself had been locally modified. Weapons that could destroy worlds fizzled uselessly as the quantum states they relied on were rewritten. This is why we survived all our own wars, Chen explained to the increasingly desperate Kraxan command. We learned early that the most dangerous weapon isn't the biggest. It's the one that changes the rules of combat itself. The combined fleet found itself trapped in a web of altered reality, unable to retreat as their hyperdrives failed to function in the modified spacetime. Each attempt to break free only entangled them further in humanity's quantum maze. As the mighty Kraxan armada hung helpless in space, Shen allowed herself a small smile. Humanity had prepared for this moment not by building better weapons, but by learning to rewrite the laws of physics themselves. They had turned their entire solar system into a trap, ready to spring on any would-be conquerors. The breaking point had arrived, but it wasn't humanity that was breaking. Supreme Overlord Caxthal's crystalline form had lost its luster, dulled by the weight of impending defeat. The combined fleet, the greatest armada ever assembled in the history of the Kraxan Empire, hung motionless in space, caught in humanity's reality-warping web. The World Ender, their mightiest vessel, now seemed like little more than an ornate cage. They control the fundamental forces of the universe itself. Science Minister Lexthar's voice wavered with a mixture of fear and fascination. Every attempt to understand their technology only reveals deeper layers of manipulation. They're not just operating beyond our understanding. They're operating beyond what we thought possible. On the bridge of the UES Prometheus, Commander Chen watched the trapped Kraxan fleet through quantum-enhanced sensors. The ship had emerged from its tactical cloak, no longer needing to hide its position. "Status of the Sol System Defense Grid?" she asked. "Operating at optimal efficiency," Chief Engineer Puddle reported. "The quantum lattice is stable, and the reality distortion fields are maintaining integrity. We could keep their fleet trapped for years if necessary." But humanity had no intention of merely containing the threat. Throughout the solar system, a new phase of their defense plan was activating. Quantum processors embedded in every planet, moon, and asteroid began synchronizing, creating a vast computational network that spanned the entire system. "Begin the interface protocol," Chen commanded. Across the quantum lattice, billions of microscopic machines, far more advanced than the earlier Nexus swarms, spread through space. These weren't weapons of destruction, but tools of communication and understanding. Inside the world ender, Caxthul watched in confusion as strange patterns of light danced across every surface. The Nanomachines were infiltrating not to destroy, but to create a bridge between species. "We're establishing a direct quantum neural link," Chen's voice echoed in the minds of every Craxan, transmitted through the very fabric of space itself. "It's time you understood exactly what you're facing." Through the link, the Craxan leadership experienced a compressed history of human development. They saw a species that had spent millennia fighting itself, developing ever more sophisticated ways of warfare. They witnessed how humanity had turned its greatest weakness, its constant fear of the unknown, into its greatest strength. "You conquered 1,000 worlds," Chen continued, "because you found them unprepared. But humanity, we've been preparing for this moment since we first looked up at the stars and felt fear. Every science fiction story, every paranoid conspiracy theory, every wild imagination of alien invasion. We turned them all into research projects. The neural link showed them the true scope of human innovation. Quantum physics hadn't just been studied. It had been mastered to the point where reality itself became malleable. Nanotechnology hadn't stopped at microscopic machines. It had evolved into programmable matter that could reshape itself at will. "Your empire expanded through space," Chen explained. "We expanded through possibility. While you were building bigger ships and stronger weapons, we were learning to rewrite the laws of physics themselves." Through the quantum network, the Craxan witnessed humanity's other achievements. Cities that could phase shift to avoid natural disasters. Medical technology that could rewrite genetic code in real time. Power generation systems that tapped into the quantum fabric of reality itself. "We don't want your empire," Chen stated firmly. "We don't want to conquer or rule. But we will not be conquered, and we will not be ruled. The choice before you now is simple. Adapt to a universe where humanity exists as equals, or remain trapped in a web of your own aggression." In the Grand Council chamber, now linked directly to the world ender through quantum entanglement, the reality of the situation began to sink in. The Craxan Empire had not merely encountered a new species, they had encountered a civilization that had developed along an entirely different technological path, one that made their own achievements seem primitive by comparison. "Perhaps," Science Minister Lexthar suggested, his crystalline form resonating with newfound respect, "it is time we learned from these humans, rather than attempting to dominate them. Their understanding of reality itself, it could revolutionize our own civilization." As the quantum neural link faded, leaving the Craxan leadership to contemplate their situation, Commander Chen allowed herself a moment of reflection. This was why humanity had developed such overwhelming defensive capabilities, not to destroy potential enemies, but to make warfare against Earth so monumentally futile that peace became the only logical option. The tables had turned, but this was not the end of the story. It was, perhaps, the beginning of something far more interesting. A future where humanity's paranoid preparation could be transformed into tools of progress and understanding. One standard galactic year after the confrontation in the Sol system, the landscape of interstellar politics had transformed beyond recognition. The grand halls of the Galactic Concordat, once the exclusive domain of the Craxan Empire and its subjugated allies, now hosted representatives from Earth. Commander Chen, now serving as humanity's primary diplomatic representative, stood before the assembled delegates of 1,000 worlds. The chamber itself was a testament to the changes wrought by humanity's emergence. Quantum-enhanced communication systems, developed through collaboration between human and Craxan scientists, allowed instantaneous transmission across the galaxy. The once rigid hierarchy of the Empire had given way to something new, a cooperative alliance of civilizations, each contributing their unique perspectives and technologies. "The universe is vast," Chen addressed the assembly, her words carried through quantum channels to every corner of known space. But our greatest frontier was never the physical distance between stars. It was the distance between different ways of thinking, different approaches to understanding reality itself. In the years since the failed invasion, humanity had begun sharing carefully selected aspects of their technology. Not the reality-warping weapons or system-wide defense grids, but the underlying principles that had led to their development. The results had been revolutionary. Former Supreme Overlord Caxfull, now serving as the Chief Administrator of Scientific Exchange, rose to speak. His crystalline form had evolved, enhanced by collaborative research into quantum biological integration. "We thought we had reached the pinnacle of technological achievement," he admitted. "The humans showed us that we had barely scratched the surface of what's possible." The displays around the chamber showed the fruits of this collaboration. Worlds once stripped bare by imperial mining operations were being restored through programmable matter technology. Quantum communication networks allowed instant connection between civilizations that had been isolated for millennia. Medical breakthroughs combining human quantum manipulation with Kraxan crystalline biology were extending lifespans and curing previously incurable conditions. But perhaps our greatest achievement, Chen continued, has been learning to transform our fears into foundations for progress. Humanity spent centuries preparing for war among the stars. Now we're learning to prepare for peace. The Sol system defense grid remained active, a reminder of humanity's capability for self-defense. But its quantum lattice now also served as the backbone of an interstellar transportation network, allowing ships to traverse vast distances through carefully controlled space-time distortions. In orbit around Earth, the UES Prometheus had become a symbol of this transformation. Its quantum adaptive hull now housed the galaxy's most advanced research facility, where scientists from hundreds of species worked together to push the boundaries of what was possible. "We stand at a crossroads," Chen addressed the assembly. "The power to reshape reality itself is now within our collective grasp. The question before us is not whether we can use it, but how we choose to do so." Deep in the chamber, Science Minister Lexthar's sensors detected a familiar quantum signature. The nanomachines that had once been used to establish first contact with the Kraxan had evolved into a galaxy-wide network of quantum-entangled particles, creating a shared consciousness that transcended species barriers. "Our civilization once expanded through conquest," Lexthar observed. "Now we expand through understanding. The humans didn't just defeat our military. They showed us a better path forward." The assembly chamber itself was changing as he spoke, its structure shifting and flowing through programmable matter technology. It was a living symbol of the new order, adaptable, dynamic, and built on cooperation rather than domination. "The legacy we create today," Chen concluded, "will echo through the stars for generations to come. Not as a testament to any one species' superiority, but as proof that our greatest achievements come when we combine our strengths." As her words resonated through the quantum network, rippling across the galaxy at speeds that defied traditional physics, a new chapter in galactic history was being written. Humanity had emerged onto the cosmic stage, not as conquerors or victims, but as catalysts for change. The stars themselves seemed to shine brighter, their light passing through space-time shaped by the combined knowledge of 1,000 worlds. The legacy of humanity's paranoid preparation had become something far greater than anyone could have imagined. A future where the boundaries between possible and impossible were redrawn every day, and where the combined imagination of countless species reached ever higher into the cosmic unknown. In the end, humanity's greatest contribution to the galaxy wasn't their advanced technology or their reality-warping capabilities. It was the simple yet profound idea that the best defense against the unknown wasn't to fear it or dominate it, but to understand it, adapt to it, and ultimately, to transform it into something better.